All right, welcome in. It's Browns Film Breakdown. It is your Thursday, May 15th podcast, and we have a Cleveland Browns schedule release. Whether you were a fan of how they performed their video work or not, I think it's a little underwhelming, but I understand some of you might feel different. But nonetheless, it is always a fun time when schedule release stuff comes out for the sole sake of social media teams around the NFL getting a chance to be super creative. Ironically, a couple teams, I think the Colts and Chargers did something Minecraft related, and something my son, who's a huge Minecraft fan, loved to see. There were others that the Titans going after a different angle. The Bills brought in Allen Iverson. It's just a chance for these teams to be really creative. Me personally, I'm not all too in on the intrigue of this part of the NFL calendar. I know it's fun for some folks to check some of the, leaks in the coming days and figuring out how many primetime games your team has and all of that. And I get that. And a lot of Browns fans like to map out what road games they want to go to, which ones, you need to put in some PTO time for now, or figure it out if you got a friend in another city, you can crash at their place and save some money. It's an exciting thing. I'm not all too into it for, I think you guys know me well enough now to know I care about on-field football schematic stuff more than I care about the surrounding noise. If I'm like ranking things I care about in the NFL world, it's more clearly breaking down, analyzing what's going on in the field, player performances, and then kind of following that immediately is team building, roster building, and so on and so forth down the line. So this isn't something that I was like chomping at the bit to get in and talk about or have a live show like a lot of people do. I just, playing the schedule game, a lot of that analysis stuff just isn't something I'm all too interested. So I do want to talk about it though. I think figuring out the opponents when you get those released at the end of the year is always a far more interesting thing than the logistics of when they're playing. To the surprise of nobody, the Browns have 0 primetime Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night games on the schedule. All right. So when you're looking at this and mapping out next year, you got a lot of 1:00 games. So this, you've probably heard it by now, but every single game on the schedule is a 1:00 kick, except for 3. We'll talk about those 3 in a minute. I personally love it. I like schedule consistency. I like being in and out in the middle of a Sunday and not staying up until 3 a.m. covering the game, right? This is just, again, me speaking certainly selfishly more than anything else. What I enjoy about it is, like I said, the consistency of games and time and in and out, and the operation of having your Sunday morning to get some stuff done, right? But also not going too late into the evening that you can't have some sense of normalcy. So I like it. You guys probably don't like it. I understand that. There is also more flexibility than ever to alter these schedules later in the season. So keep that in mind as we look at some of the 4:00 scheduled start times. And obviously the idea that if the Browns are having a surprise season here, they can get out and change some of these late season games. So it's exciting. Is obviously I think a slew of road games that would be interesting to go to if you like to visit another city. I have a lot of friends who do that, who will go to one road game a year to get out and experience the different cities and check out the stadium you've never been to, obviously. And I think once the Browns build at Brook Park, there will be a lot of road fans who will want to come check out that stadium. It'll be a similar setup. But I know last year a lot of folks went to Vegas because that was an interesting one to see that new stadium. Ironically enough, you get that opportunity again this year. So yeah, that's the current setup. Let's just talk through this on a basic level. Then we'll talk through some of the strength of schedule perception stuff. I don't like using last year's record as the barometer because I just don't think that takes into account everything that needs to be taken into account. So we will cover this from a couple different angles, really the early portion of the year, and then the whole schedule. We'll cover that as well. So we start with Cincinnati, and Baltimore right off the bat. Two obviously talented interdivision teams. And I think last year, you started with very few division teams to start the season. So getting Bengals at home, traveling to Baltimore early is a nice start to the season to get those division games kind of rolling, right? I think that those are, to me, at least me personally, I like getting that started, especially like with the Bengals because they're not the hottest starting team in the league. So getting that one home game right off the bat where they 2 years ago won that game in the nasty weather. It's certainly possible with the Bengals, a new defensive coordinator, some uncertainty up front on that offensive line, right? What's Trey Hendrickson's situation going to look like? Is it going to run in and get nasty in training camp? It's intriguing to say the least, right? So you get them early, you get Baltimore early. They extended Derrick Henry today. A couple more years of that would be nice to find the cliff for Derrick Henry. Tired of watching him now in the division dominate, but that'll be tough. But what's interesting to me is you get Green Bay at home, which is the first time they've had Green Bay at home in a little while here. But then you get the 3 straight road games. In the middle of those is the Vikings trip to, and obviously meeting them in London. Well, it's ironic because you haven't seen the Vikings in Cleveland in a long time. I think the last time they were in Cleveland, because the last time as the division crossovers happened, 17, 21, 25, they didn't come to Cleveland in 17 because if I recall correctly, that was the last time the Browns were, ironically enough, in London. And then I think the last time the Vikings came to Cleveland was that Adrian Peterson year. So you're talking around like 2011, I think is when you're talking about they came to Cleveland last. So, or 12, maybe 13. I don't know. I can't do math well, but maybe 2013 was the last time they came to Cleveland. So yeah, it's you get the Vikings away, but it's cool to see the Packers in Cleveland. Haven't seen them there since I think maybe 18, 17. I think 17 they came to Cleveland, but I could be wrong on that again. I think that was the Deshaun Kaiser game that they came, and then obviously they when they crossed over again, Baker Mayfield and the crew went up there and laid an egg in Lambeau. But nonetheless, I digress. You do get 2 of those early season NFC North teams out of the way there. The Lions' early schedule is pretty rough. So interesting to see the Lions' new offensive coordinator working through things. A lot of changes to that staff. Might be a good time to catch them. You never know. But that 3-game road trip setup, which is Detroit, travel overseas to play the Vikings in London, who will have played in Dublin the week before, so they'll be more accustomed to the time situation, right? So you get them, I think you could call it a disadvantage because the Browns will be adjusting. Now, they did get the opportunity to decide. They don't get to pick the bye specifically if they decline it. So you can get the bye right after your trip overseas. So you could have that week, 7 bye, if you so choose, or 6 bye, if they wanted it. They declined it. They wanted it later in the season. The NFL obliged. So you do get 3 road games in a row there, though. So you come back from London, and then you got to go to Pittsburgh, where everybody struggles, especially the Browns, who have won 1 game there in a long. It's been so long since they have won a regular season road game in Pittsburgh. Not obviously the playoff COVID year. So history's not great there. And then you come back home for Miami, and then you travel to New England. We'll see. The New England thing is a little interesting at minimum because you have the opportunity, against Vrabel, who's going to kind of change the culture there. But again, where are they at middle of the year? And you get to the bye. Now, out of the bye, I think you got some games on the back half that are manageable. You get the Jets, you get the Ravens at home, where the Browns have played them tougher. You get the trip out at 4:00. And again, I want to make reference here that setup there where it's week 11 and 12, Baltimore and Las Vegas are both slated to be 4:00 start times. Now, the NFL could flex the Ravens-Browns one out of that time because it's later in the year, and who knows where both of those teams are. Obviously, we're thinking if the Browns aren't competitive, it could get changed. I don't think the Vegas one would get changed, obviously, because it's a time zone thing, and they're out in the left coast time zone. So that's at least at minimum your one bank on a 4:00 game. The London game, as we know, is a 9:30 a.m. kick. So other than that, you get a stretch. Like what I'm getting at is you got that 3-game stretch of road games early in the season. Technically, the Vikings game is a home game, but it's not a home game. So you get the 3 road game stretch there that happens last week of September through the middle of September. I think that's October 12th. and then you kind of try to find, well, okay, where's the home game stretch? And you kind of get it here late in the season, weeks 13 and 14, you're at home. You do take a shorter road trip to Chicago, and then you get Buffalo and Pittsburgh at home. So you close at home 4 of 5 weeks, and then you get the Bengals on the road to end the season with an unannounced start time there. So, yeah, I mean, I think the front half is obviously tougher than the back half, which is the complete opposite of last year. And again, things change. Who knows where this will be later in the season? But the front half being tougher, and if you can come out of it feeling decent, then getting to the back half of the schedule, you see a lot of opportunity, I think, from the middle of May here to win some football games and close down the stretch relatively strong. So the front half is tougher. The back half is more manageable, but that 3-game stretch, which I think will be the most pivotal 3-game stretch of their season, is how are they off the 2 division rivals to start the year? But then it's like, say you're 1-2, something of the sort. Can you win a game or two on those? You're getting the Lions, who are really hard to play in that dome, traveling to London, and then you're getting the road trip to Pittsburgh, which everybody kind of dreads, obviously. It's hard. It's a hard front half of the schedule, especially so you like to get the Dolphins later in the year because it's colder and a bit more uncomfortable for them, but you get them in the middle of October, so that's not any advantage really. So I'm going to be honest, it's a tough schedule. It's a tough schedule, and it's a year where we probably don't think they could use a tough schedule, considering they went 3-14. Now the Titans don't have any primetime games. The other team that went 3-14 are the Giants, and I think they still have found a way to get 3 primetime games for the Giants. It's driven by the market there, folks. But for teams like the Giants, if you look at the strength of schedule based on DraftKings Super Bowl odds, just like taking every opponent on the schedule and then applying a difficulty on that opponent based on how likely the DraftKings Sportsbook thinks they are to win the Super Bowl, the Giants have the toughest schedule. A sort of 797 ranking for opponents in difficulty, like listed there at the top. Again, one being the most difficult, 32 being the easiest. The Browns have the 5th, the most difficult. So tough. Pittsburgh is 8, and then Cincinnati is 12, and then Baltimore, I might have skipped over them, they're 13. So it's a tough division this year, tough schedule for everyone, but technically speaking, Baltimore and Cincinnati, who are at the top of the division, well, Pittsburgh was too, all of those teams have easier schedules. You'd like to think, okay, Browns, let's play that 4th place schedule, right? But getting the 4th place teams doesn't mean those teams don't have their fortunes flipped and in a better place, right? So it's challenging, man. It's pretty challenging. San Francisco has the easiest schedule. Arizona, Seattle. So a lot of those NFC West teams, in theory, and AFC South teams are listed as having the easiest schedule on the books. So again, take it for what it's worth, but I do find it at least moderately interesting. And some other places such as Sharp Football Analysis, looking at strength of schedule, they do it based on a specific criteria where they're looking at Vegas win totals, which is a little different than Super Bowl odds. They have the Browns as the 2nd hardest schedule. The Giants is the toughest. Browns is the 2nd hardest. That's not great. Now, if you would like to put a little more optimistic spin on it, if you just sort of isolate weeks 1 through 11, the Browns' schedule is not as challenging comparatively. They're 19th on that one, whereas others in the division are even more favorably on the easier side. Baltimore, I think Baltimore is sitting, let me make sure I have this correct in front of me. They're all kind of clustered here. So the Steelers, again, 1 being the easiest. The Steelers are at 11, the Bengals are at 9, and then the Browns are 19, and then they have Baltimore technically at 27. That's just based on forecasted wins, and that's only in weeks 1 through 11. So if you want to spin it, technically speaking, even though I think the first 6-7 weeks are challenging, right? You do have if you isolate weeks 1 through 11, an opportunity more so than the whole thing to have a chance to feel like you can hover and hold your breath here. So I don't know, guys. I think it's a challenging schedule. And when you don't have a great situation at quarterback, the way the Browns are sort of swimming upstream, figuring out who they are offensively and navigating who they're going to be defensively a little bit. They're going to have some defensive consistency, I think, is in a better place. But you got to remember JOK, that situation, what the safety room ends up looking like, who's playing the most snaps there, who steps up at the edge opposite Myles Garrett, how's Mason Graham look. There's intriguing talent. There's intriguing storylines here, no doubt. But I think the Vegas win total is 4.5 or 5. And if I'm being completely honest and I'm not wearing the glasses, it's hard to feel like you want to put a lot of money on the over. Do I think they can get there? Yeah, I think they can. I think they could get to 8 or 9 wins. Not a team that you think can get to 11 or 12. And I don't think the schedule's helping you feel any more confident about that. But I certainly think it's a team that can push that 8 or 9 number. Now, with the multiple first-round picks, maybe you want to give it another year here where you get a higher pick again, get another run at quarterback. If, depends. Maybe one of these rookies really solidifies themselves in some unique way. But as we're sitting here again in the middle of May trying to talk about a football season looming ahead, it's hard to spin it really, really positive. So challenging schedule, challenging team identity situation going on, challenging situation at quarterback. They have their work cut out for them. What they do also have, though, spinning again positively on this stuff, is that back against the wall, nobody believes in us. I even saw Grant Delpit tweet out, I only wanted 1 o'clock starts anyway. It's a lot of nobody believes in us for the first time in a while. The Browns have been the darling for a little bit here over the years. 2020, they were hyped up in 21. A lot of this stuff about their, this roster is good. Like this is the first year where, because of the Watson thing, it built some belief and excitement. And then like the 23-2 season, you were competitive. You go into 23, you lose Watson, that hasn't been, but you got a great season out of 23. You beat the odds and played well. Then you get excited because, well, look what they did last year, what they're going to do this year because of all they overcame last year. I feel like this is the first time probably since, because you got to think, guys, you had a lot of Baker Mayfield excitement in 19, 20, and then 21. Is this the first time since 18, Mayfield's rookie year, Nick Chubb's rookie year, Denzel's rookie, where people were like, this team's probably not going to be very good and the schedule's hard and that lowers and tempers the expectations? Probably. I would think the most tempered and because if you think back again, you got the first overall pick at quarterback, so they're going to want to put him on prime time. You got that in 18. You got that Thursday night football game. You got the Odell Beckham trade in 19. So you build even more excitement. You're getting primetime games. You're getting them again in 2020. And then you have a great 2020 season, push you into the playoffs. You make the second round of the playoffs. You get more primetime games in 21. Yeah, step back in 21. But 22, you still got intriguing pieces of this whole thing. And you ultimately ended up making a trade for Deshaun Watson, right? So you got even more intrigue late in the year. I just would think the indication here is no primetime games. So they are not well received by the league. And on top of that, you still have a lot of mystery about quarterback and how watchable they will be for the general public outside of the Browns. So I am interested to see how they play, how they prepare, how they perform when their expectations are to be bad, because I think this is the worst general expectations the team has had in a while. I would say since the 2017 season, and we all know how that went. It's not as bad by any stretch as that, but you can see where the schedule difficulty and some of the roster questions at vital positions leads us to be a little nervous about what this looks like, and the win total being something that you're very tempered on what that looks like. So I get it. I don't think that I'm here to tell you guys that this group can't be good. There's a lot of young players. I am so fascinated to see how they play. And I'm very interested in so many pieces of this year and guys throwing the football and guys running the football and the way the defense plays with the third year with Schwartz. I am very intrigued by it all. So, yeah, it's tough, but it could simultaneously be fun. And you got a couple first round picks to pay attention to. The Jags schedule is pretty tough as well. It's pretty tough. They're 28th in that 1 through 11 stretch. So it's going to be tough for them too. And we're keeping our eye on what the Jags pick looks like throughout the year. There is absolutely no doubt about that. All right. That's it for today. Thanks for supporting Browns Film Breakdown. And go to a game, get out on the road, go to Detroit. There's a great game to go to. You know, you maybe got friends there, or Chicago. If I was picking and I didn't get out to Vegas last year, I'd certainly go this year. But otherwise, you know, I'm looking at that Chicago, like I said, Chicago game and Detroit game, and getting up to Ford Field and seeing that one are the most interesting ones if you can't afford everything it costs to go overseas and watch the Browns in London. So yeah, that's the two I would be interested in going to this year if you maybe went out to Vegas last year. Fun environments, right? So, all right, thanks for stopping by, supporting Browns Film Breakdown, and however you're finding us, whether YouTube, give us a subscription and a thumbs up. If you're on the podcast audio form, give us that much appreciated written review and 5 stars. And above all else, come join us at the website, brownsfilmbreakdown.com, where you get the podcast delivered to you every day. You get video, film content, you get all the deep dive analysis a person can want in a great, very passionate Browns community that we have built over here. So again, thanks for stopping by, and we will be back with a fresh podcast tomorrow. Might even get a guest on the show. It'll be exciting. We'll be here. We'll be on video. We'll be on audio. And until then, thanks for being here. Go Browns.